The atmosphere at Fairmont Crest had never known a single moment of peace, constantly battered by undercurrents of desire, secrets, and betrayals that relentlessly shook the very foundations of what once seemed unbreakable. In the midst of it all, Chelsea was living days filled with a fragile hope, daring for the first time to let down her guard and open her heart to Madison. What seemed like a harmless evening, a candlelit date, gradually turned into an irreversible turning point in both of their lives. Their swift, passionate connection left Chelsea unprepared for the consequences, for she was unaware that lurking outsiders had been patiently and coldly watching and recording every move she and Madison made, with the predatory patience of a hunter. Lost in the intoxication of newfound feelings, neither of them realized that every glance, every smile, and each intimate moment had already been captured by hidden cameras in the living room. The presence of a mysterious waiter at the country club was the first sign of coming trouble, but Martin, in his own panic and haunted by the past, only heightened the tension by lashing out violently in an attempt to quell his own anxieties, leaving behind a series of questions with no clear answers. Things became truly serious when Chelsea unexpectedly received anonymous messages. First just vague threats, but quickly growing specific, accompanied by video clips of her most private moments with Madison from their date. Fear crept into Chelsea's mind, but what sent her spiraling into despair was realizing that Madison was also receiving similar messages, perhaps even more menacing. For in the videos sent to Madison, there were not just intimate scenes but also documents related to charitable surgeries Madison had performed for Fairmont Crest's medical fund. Someone had dug into the smallest loopholes, unearthing old medical records, financial documents, patient lists, prescriptions with altered signatures, and failed procedures that Madison had always agonized over. Madison had always been a dedicated doctor, pouring all her energy into helping patients in difficult situations, often bending regulations to secure emergency funding or cover for the mistakes of vulnerable nurses. Yet, such dedication sometimes came with compromises she hoped no one would ever discover. Some patients had recovered thanks to unapproved experimental drugs. Some charitable paperwork had been adjusted to deceive auditors, all to buy time for those with no hope left. Madison was not a bad person, but she understood the thin line between idealism and wrongdoing that forever haunts those in medicine. Any exposure of her actions would not only destroy her career but could land her behind bars. Now, all of it was in the hands of an invisible puppeteer. The blackmailer was relentless. Unless Madison transferred a large sum from the research fund to a shell company, or unless Chelsea persuaded her family to invest in an illegal business venture, the videos, secret documents, and damning evidence about the risky surgeries would be sent to the hospital board and the media. Madison was thrown into panic, not daring to confide in anyone but Chelsea, terrified that a single misstep would see the dark powers at Fairmont Crest destroy everything she had tried to build for her patients. Chelsea tried to comfort Madison, but she too was drawn into the vortex of despair when her own family members began receiving threatening messages alluding to personal secrets and even threats to expose her old relationships, threatening a fresh scandal for a family already scarred by so many storms. The psychological pressure left both women exhausted, torn between trust and fear of betrayal, knowing full well that the blackmailer was no outsider, but likely someone within the hospital system or the upper echelons of Fairmont Crest society. Madison found herself under intense scrutiny at work. Surgeries were subject to sudden audits, and even her most loyal patients became targets of suspicion. Financial reports from the charitable fund began to show suspicious errors, and ethics committees summoned her for questioning. Madison realized that if she continued to capitulate, it was only a matter of time before she lost everything: her career, her honor, and even her right to care for the vulnerable patients she had sworn to protect. Chelsea decided to take action, investigating the blackmailer's trail despite the dangers. Secret meetings, midnight break-ins at the hospital records room, and overheard conversations gradually revealed a much larger conspiracy. The illicit funds Madison was forced to move were only the tip of the iceberg. Delving deeper, Chelsea uncovered a transnational money laundering network using the guise of medical charities and benevolent activities to legitimize vast sums flowing through Fairmont Crest. Numerous doctors, administrators, and even local politicians had been bribed or coerced into participating, and Madison was merely a key link in the organization's scheme. Madison's heartbreak was immense when she discovered that many she had trusted, even close colleagues, had quietly abetted this plot, and some special patients were actually fronts for shadowy financial transactions. The brutal truth left Madison both furious and hopeless, realizing that all her efforts to help the weak had simply made her a tool for those seeking power. Meanwhile, the blackmail escalated. Madison received a stream of anonymous letters, photos snapped inside the operating room, and internal documents sent to the Quality Control Board, with minor errors inflated into major violations. Facing the imminent collapse of everything she'd worked for, Madison was forced to make a final choice. Either confess all and face the law and public outrage, or join Chelsea in a counterattack to unmask the mastermind. They began quietly gathering new evidence, teaming with a handful of loyal friends left in the hospital, secretly collecting data, reconstructing the flow of tainted money, and plotting to lure the mastermind into the open. Each day became a tense battle of wits, as Madison and Chelsea no longer knew whom to trust or suspect. Even those they once called friends could now be agents of the criminal organization. The cost of fighting for the truth might be everything, even their lives, but they knew that surrender would mean the corruption of the entire Fairmont Crest medical system, condemning countless innocent lives. When the storm reached its peak, one night Madison received a chilling warning. If she dared to reveal everything, a medical accident would befall her very next high-profile surgery. In that moment, Chelsea discovered the vital clue that could identify the mastermind, giving them one last chance to turn the tide. With the veil of secrecy torn away, there was no turning back. Madison and Chelsea had to choose: become the next victims in Fairmont Crest's sordid scandals, or bravely expose the whole truth, risking their freedom, careers, and futures for the sake of conscience and honor. Whatever the outcome, from that point forward, no one at Fairmont Crest would ever return to their old illusions of safety, for the fire of truth and the hunger for justice had finally been kindled in what once seemed the calmest of sanctuaries.